Okay, so it's been a very long time now, I think going back to episode 41, Crushes and Flushes, that coming to us from Hanover, Germany. Teresa, welcome back.
Thank you, Clark. It's been a while.
I know, and we had some technical misfires over the last few months trying to get you on an episode. And anyway, we don't want to bore people with that. It's good to have you back on, hopefully a little more regularly now that we have this new way of recording our podcast, which this will be the first time doing it. So hopefully it all works out. Mm-hmm. Well, why don't we start off with just a bit of catch up on, you had a trip you took, which was what, 2 weeks ago, a week ago you got back?
Came back
and it was in the COVID, under the new COVID rules and protocols and all that. So tell us a little bit about that trip.
Right. So this was, it wasn't my first trip during the pandemic, but it was my first trip in 2021. First time getting on a plane in 2021. And I wasn't exactly keen, but my friend suggested we should go to Greece. We went to the beautiful island of Crete, which was sort of off season. So we weren't expecting too much traffic. And I mean, overall, a beautiful trip, good weather, not too hot, mostly sunny days, fantastic food, great scenery. It was a fantastic trip, but as we went there, I'm not a great flyer. I've always been a nervous flyer. And
you've flown a lot though, right?
So I've flown a lot, right?
So it's a nerve-wracking experience often for you.
Yeah, absolutely. But I've never been a great flyer, and I cannot get rid of that flight anxiety and the fear of that death you'd experience if a plane comes down and you're fully conscious if that's what happens.
Yeah. Anyhow, do you ever wait before you go on? Do you ever get those moments on a plane where you're kind of the turbulence are bouncing and you're maybe getting toward that landing, or something feels a bit weird and you start thinking about all those things, that loose ends that you have got back home?
I have had the co-pilot come up to me and explain to me that everything's fine. Or, well, not so much me, a stewardess had the co-pilot come up to me and tell me everything is going to be fine. I have on occasions asked strangers to hold my hand because that would comfort me. And it's all got to do with really small turbulences. It's not, as soon as the plane is fine and it's a smooth flight and, I'm watching something decent on television, I'm good. As soon as there is the tiniest amount of shaking or some sort of a noise, I get very nervous. Also, I don't like flying at night, because I always wonder that, do you remember that Air France flight that came down and they were kind of stalling, and before they didn't even know they were going to hit the ocean because they couldn't see. And so I'm always trying to look out of the window instead of trying to sleep at night flights, thinking like, can I see the clouds? And as long as I can see the cloud cover, I know we're still far up. And
I see. So that's what you like to be able to see when at night, is the ability to see the clouds, so that you're still
able
up high.
To see we're high enough. Yeah. So right. Anyhow, but I've flown a lot, been around the world, and the way there was, it's 3.5 hours from Hamburg to Crete. It's not very long, but it felt like in that same amount of time we just could have made it to Australia. It felt that long. So that was really exhausting. Got there looking forward to the holidays, and then on the way back, we had some weight issues. Had purchased some knickknacks, souvenirs. We were overweight, and then checking in with a whole bunch of other Germans. It was a German commercial holiday flight. And so they I think this...
That means that it was a tour group sort of thing, or?
We weren't on a tour, but that plane was just packed with tourists. Even though it was off season, that was a touristy plane because it's a touristy destination, right? It's not your New York...
Not a business trip or...
Business trip, yeah. And so they made you unpack every single kilogram that you had too much in your luggage, and eventually we brought it down to being 5 kilograms overweight, and we finally, gosh, we're just going to pay for it, and we did pay dearly for that, so that pissed me off already. But they made me put the other stuff in my hand luggage, so I had hand luggage that was really heavy. Finally went through customs and the security, and then you were in the duty free, and it was just a horrible experience. And my friend went to the restroom, and as I stood there waiting for him, I wondered if traveling has always been this shitty and we were just not aware of it, or if it's extra shitty now. And I cannot make up my mind, because really none of what we experience in these moments leading up to that flight had really to do with COVID. We didn't even have to show our certificates because you had to upload that before. But it was just so many people, so much merchandise, so much selling, so much, suitcase too heavy, being exhausted, having to go into that flight. I cannot imagine that I never enjoyed going on a flight anyways, as I just said, but I always liked the airport experience. And I always was excited of either going back home or going somewhere. And now I'm not sure how long I have to rest from this stressful experience. And look, this was just an hour. Then we finally got onto the plane. And then getting on the plane for another 3.5 hours, that's just the sitting still, and you're not used to that anymore. I had downloaded Netflix and great shows, and none of it would help. It just sucked, and I was miserable, and these tiny 3.5 hours could not go by fast enough. It was that horrible. I dread the time I have to go on a plane next time.
So was most of this because just how long it's been since the last time, or because of just the added complications because of COVID travel?
That's what I just said. There was no added, because we didn't have to show anything. We didn't have to fill out any forms. It had zero to do with COVID. It was just shitty traveling. Apparently airports now in a specifically touristy destination like that is really shitty, and it was cramped and packed even though it was the off season. And I cannot remember ever hating it this much, and I think I'll give it another try. I'm going on another trip in December. And I think I'll make up my mind about how much I still like going abroad or to destinations where I cannot take a bus or train.
Well, you're planning a trip to Toronto next year, right?
Oh yeah, fuck that. I mean, I have to. That I'll do, but it'll be business class, obviously.
Or it'll at least
Delta
be more
One.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a Cancun or a Mexico or type of sunny destination, so that might make it easier.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to, and that's maybe it's a positive side effect. I think in the future we'll weigh off the benefits. Like if I come and see you and other friends in Toronto, it'll be like, okay, I'll just go through that pain now, but I know what's waiting at the other end. So that'll always outweigh any complications that might arise. But I think it has really opened, and my friend said the very same thing, and he's been traveling around the world too, that it was an eye-opener of how shitty travel really is.
Well, and you mentioned the business class thing. Traveling for business, if you do get the privilege of going business class, it does get you in a zone or in a mode that is difficult to switch back to the personal economy travel scenarios. I totally get it. Yeah. First world problems, I guess, here, but But that's okay. I mean, that's how it goes.
That's how it goes. Yeah. So that was my experience. Happy to be back home in Hanover, and that's a pretty big thing to say about this city.
Yeah. So Hanover, I think we've talked about Hanover before. Why is that? Sleepy town, all businessy, or
it's quiet, but it's really, really pretty. I said that before as well. It's not London, it's not New York, it's not Tokyo, it's not Paris. But I've made myself feel at home here, and that's a good thing. I think the sleepiness about it, and yet everything being available, makes it has a high quality of living.
All right, so let's get into our topics for today. We're going to talk about, still in that COVID vein. We both joined companies a year ago in the COVID was at its height, I guess. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what that experience has been like now that we've both been on board for a year at our respective companies. And then we're also going to talk about LinkedIn. Something that I've always wanted to address on this podcast are these, I'll call it shameless self-promotion on LinkedIn, that we'll get into the details of. And what we're watching, reading, listening to. We both have a couple things there. And finish up with weird news. How does that sound? Sounds
good to me.
All right, let's get into the COVID 1 year later thing. And I don't want to spend too much time on it because everybody's dealing with COVID. But I guess the thought I had was, it's a year now since I've been in a company where I've only been in the office once. Probably a big difference between you and I. I've only been in the office physically once before. And that was just for a little tour of the office. So I've never worked at the office. I've never had meetings at the office. So all of the meetings I've had have been through, MS Teams or Zoom or whatever. And I still do feel this. It works to a certain degree, but there's definitely, you miss those organic conversations, those by chance meetings you had with people on the way to the coffee machine or around the coffee machine. And so I mean, it's still a struggle for me in a lot of ways to get close to new colleagues, because I just haven't had the chance to hang out in the way that you used to be able to hang out.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I never knew that you only had so little chances to hang out at your new office, at your new employer. For me, it was different. We were always allowed to come in, but nobody was really there. But the thought that I had when you and I spoke about discussing this topic on this episode was that when I joined my company, you recommended a book to me that's called The First 90 Days, and it's sitting somewhere near, but I cannot see it, what the author is.
Your background there isn't sort of that curated background we are so often see in these types of Zoom virtual calls. The inspirational books, the carefully placed statue, trying to convey some sort of message, which is a topic in of itself. So yeah, it's a little bit rough looking. Those books, they're not in order of any sort. They're just kind of.
And don't you think that makes me so much more likable?
It does. It does. I have to say, when I see those curated backgrounds with books angled just the right way, that you can see their title or some motivational college flags, inspirational memes of various sorts. It's not the journey, it's not the destination, it's the journey and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So Michael Watkins was the author of the book you're talking about, which I did recommend, and I've recommended to many people. So what makes you bring that up now? So
you recommended it to me, and I did not have the easiest start in my company. I might have said this before, I've never worked in a German environment. I've never even had a German colleague in my direct team in my life. I've never worked with another German, though my current team is very has a whole bunch of nationalities. However, it's a very German company, and a lot of them are Germans. And so the first 90 days, and I didn't have a great start, and I read through the book. I'm like, God, yeah, I'm never going to make this. This no wonder they hate me, and I've done, we didn't hit it off on the right note, not on the wrong note, but not on the right note. And I just couldn't figure it out. And now that's been a year, and that people are vaccinated and people are coming back to the office, and we're hanging out on dinners and drinks and team events, and we've seen each other so often by now. Finally, I'm getting all of the nuances and the politics and the culture and the vibe that goes on between people. Because it's not just you're joining a company, you're joining what I would call a family of sort that has been working together in our case for many, 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 many years. These people have known each other, have tried getting along, have gotten along, have not gotten along, but they have all been in place for so many years. And here's Teresa, and she was new, and she could not sit in her office and overhear conversations and see who likes who and who's best buddies, etc. And so what my point is that during COVID times, the first 90 days is what in COVID times is probably your first 180, if not 230 days. I don't know what it is, but it's extended that so much.
Well,
I guess I could have expected that, but you don't, because you join new and you're like, oh, but there's this book, and I'm sure somebody really, and you swore by it, and what it said sounded so true, but I could not apply it to the current situation.
Yeah, so just to give people some context around the first 90 days, so it's a book that is designed to bring people up to speed as quickly as possible within the first 90 days of starting a new job. And I've used this book for job changes, for promotions, whether it's moving to a new company or being promoted within my own company. This book has been an amazing resource. So I highly encourage anyone who's starting a new job, even before you start this job, get your hands on this book, because to me, the first 90 days starts before you even walk in the door.
I agree.
So it's an amazing resource. Some of the things in the book will be things like, how to get to know your boss, what your boss expects, how your boss likes to be communicated with. Is it weekly updates by email? Is it face-to-face? Is it over the phone? Tons of stuff going in there, figuring out what are you walking into? Are you in a startup situation? Are you in a sustaining success scenario? Are you in a rebuild, restructure? That's the first thing. And the book is kind of designed for like CEO types that are coming into organizations, but it's amazing at any level. Like, it tells you how to align yourself with the right stakeholders. Like, who are your stakeholders? Who are the people that you need to get to know? Who are the people your boss wants you to get to know?
On a horizontal and vertical level,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It gives you so much advice. Yeah.
Absolutely. So you're saying that because of COVID, it's almost like this. When I heard you say the timeline, I almost felt like you were going to say 45 days in a way, because in some ways, everything has slowed down so much, yet it's amplified because of the inability to hit the ground running because of the lack of face-to-face or these nuances of being able to pick up signaling from people, seeing people, meeting people. It's all kind of drawn out because of it being, in the scenario of virtual, a lot of virtual and the stuff you just can't do when you see people face to face.
Correct. And I say something very similar to most people that I currently, even when I introduce myself to clients on the phone these days, right? You're like, oh, hey, I'm Teresa. I've joined this company. Oh, almost a year ago. And it feels like I've only joined 3 months ago, but it's really just been a year. So the feeling is compressed into, it feels like really short, but you need much longer to get across to these advised 90 days. And even now, I'm still meeting new people from my actual team. There's one particular person, one of the first people I ever dealt with on my very first day, first deal comes in, first transaction. And we kind of didn't hit it off. It was just like sand in a cogwheel. Is that the sand in the
oil and vinegar, or oil and water, or
yeah? It was just like, you think about a machinery and then you throw some sand and it kind of doesn't run really well anymore.
Up and
yeah. And it was, you could just notice it wasn't. It was just kind of like, dread calling this guy, and he probably dreaded calling me. But he lives further away in Berlin. And then just recently had the opportunity to come in for a team event, and the minute he walked into the door of my office, our eyes lit up, and it's just like, it was instant us liking each other. It was instant. My heart opened up, and he had a big grin and same humor and great jokes, and it was just not the same. The minute you feel somebody's aura and somebody's presence, it might change everything that you think about them and feel about them.
Yeah, no, it's so true. That's, it's no secret. Face-to-face makes such a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I think, the only thing I want to add to this is that I find now, though, that as we're starting to get to the point where we may start going back in the office, I've had a few kind of false starts where I've said, tomorrow I'm going to go in the office. And then once I start going through the process, I talk myself out of it. It's like,
oh, yeah.
Where are my dress shoes? Where is my, gosh, I don't have a proper pair of dress pants ready to go. They've got dust on them because they've been hanging there in the closet for so long. Or then I'll just think, wait a sec, by the time I get the next train, go down there, walk up to the office, I'll lose an hour. So what's the point of this? Why don't I just sit at my desk or at the house here and work for 45 minutes, and then I'll have that meeting and, at the same time I would have in person. I've kind of talked myself out of it a few times.
So remind me, you have just been to your office once?
One time, and that was really just for a tour.
Oh, okay. So I went almost religiously in the beginning as I started. And then I think home office is also a bit of a trap for exactly the reason that you're telling me. And they all are making sense. And just the getting ready and, making yourself look neat and ready to be an officey person takes energy. However, I find if I invest that energy, and I have spoken about this to a bunch of people in the office who face the same issues of like, yeah, but you're so comfy in your pajamas at home and you save so much time. I'd say 85% of my colleagues agree that once we're there, we are a happier person. Walking through those doors, and I know that sounds very almost old school, like we're meant to go into like some sort of a factory and do some sort of a factory job. But I think there is something in us that's like, now I'm here and this is my purpose, and I get to... There's nothing else but to focus on work. Whereas at home, I constantly think about, the dishwasher, this and that. And going to the office now, because we've been detached from it, is a holiday for my brain. It's my work brain is then where it needs to be.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think about it a lot, actually. And now this is now dragging on the topic, but it'll be a hybrid for hopefully most of us, certainly. So and the good thing is, if you don't feel mentally up for it on some mornings, guess what? You don't have to put on your dress shoes and your dress pants. You get to stay home. You can still put in the work and the effort, but you don't have to put on a smiley face for everybody you're passing on the in the hallway. So that's good news for everyone, right?
Yeah, and I like wearing slippers instead of dress shoes.
Yeah, me too.
This episode is brought to you by Pace Painting. Pace Painting, serving all your painting needs, whether commercial or residential. Reach Pace Painting at paintwithpace@gmail.com or via their Facebook page, Pace Painting Inc. Or call Peter at 289-356-7744. Paint with Pace. Okay, this second topic is one that I've hesitated bringing up before in some ways, but it's one that's really agitated or aggravated me for as long, I guess, as LinkedIn's existed. I feel like, in a way, it's gotten worse in the last year or two, but I gotta talk about it, though, because I want to find out, is it just me, or do you or others get this weird, cringy feeling when you see people on LinkedIn who post things like, it's a real privilege to be nominated for XYZ award. It's, what else? Things like, it was a real honor for me to be part of a distinguished panel to discuss blah, 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 blah. Here's another one. It is a real honor to be part of a world-class team trusted by the blah, blah, blah. And I just feel like these are just people's ways of self-promoting themselves in just a way that really rubs me the wrong way.
And we've talked about this. We
should have a little bell that goes off anytime one of us says that term.
Such a good idea. We have talked about this even prior to the pandemic. I remember this. The pandemic has now, because we're much less out there, I feel that LinkedIn texts around the very same things you've just mentioned have gotten longer and more extensive. And I want to say there is even so much so of like a shameless self-promotion bullshit bingo, like honored, privileged. I mean, it's so, what's the opposite of a diminutive if it's very large? What's the word? Well, it's just very extreme. They're using very extreme, like honored extremely and the best and the biggest, and it's just always in its most extreme. All of these emotions are being put into very grand words nowadays, rather than saying, hey, today I took part in a panel that was very interesting at a virtual conference. It has to be always, we're on a hunt of when we're online, of putting our words in and our emotions in just the grandest possible packaging that we can find. And it's almost like, I know exactly what you mean. And I sometimes avoid LinkedIn for that same reason. And sometimes I find myself going onto LinkedIn because I'm bored and I want to kind of dig like a truffle pig for these sort of posts.
I was trying to find some words that were considered antonyms for diminutive. And I don't know if any of these apply, but
it's just me blanking out now.
Immense, jumbo, leviathan, mammoth, monolithic, monstrous.
Well, monolithic probably,
stupendous.
Right? Yes. It's, everything is grander than the
vast.
previous. grandest word that expressed your feelings, rather than saying like, today I took part in a virtual conference and I had the opportunity to speak about climate change. Why not put it, and I'm finding myself liking people a lot more that just put out these bland sentences. However, though, I think I might be one of those people who try to package emotions into
To me,
words.
what annoys me about it is it's really self-promotion. It's not humble. It's not humble. It's a way. It's under the guise of humility.
What's your favorite thing? The humble brag, and we
Humble
have.
brag.
I'm not sure if we've spoken about it. Well, you and I have.
Yeah, we've talked about the humble brag is certainly a topic I've wanted to discuss before, and if anyone is wondering what the heck that is, you've probably heard one before. My favorite example is the example of oh, you're so lucky to be driving around in a Toyota Prius. My gas-guzzling Lincoln Navigator is a real pain in the ass. It's just so expensive to fill up every week.
Yeah.
So part 2 of this is it's the Good Samaritan posts. So the people that are posting things that they did that was, really special or nice to someone. And I've seen one. There was one I saw recently where it was a guy posted a picture of this old man sitting at a table in a pub somewhere.
Oh, I've seen that
with
one.
a beer. And it said, this old guy was being ignored by the wait staff at the Town and Country pub or something.
Yeah.
So I went over and I flagged down a waitress and bought him a beer. We should respect old people. They're people too. And so of course it's there, and probably 7,000 reactions to this post. That. And all the various comments that were coming in. So that apparently this guy wasn't able to figure out how he could, because of COVID, he had to use an app to order his food or his drinks.
Yeah.
And you saw all these comments like, old people, they don't always know. My aunt doesn't understand technology. It scares her to death. Like, just endless comments about these sorts of things. And I just, you see the comment, oh, you're such a great person for doing this. And am I the asshole here? Am I the one that just should be
the thing is, and then that's where the root of this is, that guy, it wasn't just Clark helping out a pensioner who's like, oh, hey, thanks for helping me out. Now I've finally got my beer. You took it away from that guy and made it about yourself, right? That's it. Now I'm just going to use a word now that's entirely removed from this, and that's a much bigger topic, but it's a white savior. It's a knight in shining armor sort of topic, where we're want to have that role, and it's with social media, so many things then get taken out of context, and it's your moment to literally shine and be the savior of somebody else's. I saw something similar, and then people were, not this particular guy who had apparently really trouble figuring out the menu, but just an old guy, an older gentleman, having dinner by himself at a pub. And an influencer took a picture and said, isn't that really sad to see? And then she did a selfie of her looking really pretty. And other people said, like, well, maybe he just wants to have a dinner by himself. Let him. You don't know what the story is behind that. Exactly. And I'm pretty sure that man who couldn't use his smartphone was capable enough of flagging down the waitress himself, be like, hey, sorry, I don't understand this. People are out there. Don't take away, just because people are older, don't just assume they're also dumber or they cannot help themselves.
Right. I think you made a great point earlier when you said that people are taking these things and making them about themselves.
Yeah.
Almost hijacking what we have no idea what kind of moment that was. I want to share another example. So someone had posted something about the fact they went to a coffee shop, and they said they had to wait about 15 minutes, and they watched this young lady barista, it says, alone behind the counter, and she had a big smile on her face, and she was so pleasant. and people were being a bit mean and short with her because they were waiting for their drinks. And according to her, instead of feeling annoyed about the situation, she decided to talk to the manager of this worker and give her praises for how she had done such a great job, this barista, at keeping a smile on her face, and that she carried the brand of this coffee shop in a high standard. And she said to the barista, she said how much she appreciated it. And she says, well, I have no choice. Someone didn't show up to work today. And the poster's response to that was, yes, you did have a choice, and you chose to be here. You're awesome, and I thank you for the coffee you are now serving me. And also goes to add that she left a $4 tip. Wow, so nice, isn't it? Now, who is this about? Who is this about? The poster? Or about the nice, kind barista at the coffee shop? There
is a gazillion stories about topics like that out there. I had recently seen something very similar about people picking litter this was in the UK, and they had so a guy, his wife, and their 2 kids. Then he was a manager at a bigger company. They went out to pick litter, and then they made it all about themselves, right? And so they were actually busy taking pictures of themselves picking up the litter.
Selfies with the litter behind them in bags. I have seen that too.
Isn't there a saying that says, do good and talk about it? And I guess that's, take it out into the world. And so the message kind of spreads, but with social media, it's an infestation, and I don't think it's about, in a lot of cases, it's not about doing good. It's about you looking good, right?
Yeah. So I guess listeners can either fully agree and say, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, or they'll just be like, you guys are a couple of assholes. Why can't you just enjoy what nice things are being put out there?
If you were a hiring manager, if I barely post on LinkedIn, but if anything that is in a work context, I'll be sure to check a gazillion times over. I'll keep it really short because just like you and me, if we were hiring managers, I don't know, that would just strike my wrong course. I'd be like, no, not that kind of guy. It's just too busy with themselves, right?
Well, I think they're hoping for the opposite. Someone will see that and say, "Oh, what a wonderful person they are. They're good people. I want that kind of person."
Yeah.
I'm going to read one more.
Sure.
It was this one's kind of funny. It's someone posted. This was back to they've been recognized or honored or whatever. It says, "Wow, it's a real honor to be recognized for my work at ABC Company and elsewhere as a top innovator influencer." So he's been nominated for an award here.
It's just
good for you, Brad.
God.
Okay, we'll move into what we're watching, reading, listening to. And I know you had a couple things you were bouncing around. Ted Lasso was one that Paul mentioned in the last episode.
Yeah.
You had another one, though, that I can relate to because I've also started watching it. Why don't we talk about that one?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, and it's nothing. I think everyone's watching it. The morning show. I had gotten an.
Oh, right. That's not the one I was thinking of. You're right. You changed it. It was Squid Game.
Squid Game. I almost don't want to mention it because it's just you're almost uncool mentioning it. But no, during our time in Crete, first things first, when I saw the trailer of Squid Game, I'm like, no, totally not my thing. And then I
didn't see the trailer. I just kept hearing everybody talking about it. So I had no idea I knew it was Asian, but I didn't know anything else. So I had Squid Game. I just thought sounds stupid, but I thought there'd be some kind of a squid and all this, no, and there is, I guess.
Trailer didn't.
I didn't see the trailer.
And I was like, nah, it's not gonna be my thing. It looked because it's kind of, I guess, almost like a bit dystopian, right? And that's not sort of my thing, and it'll bring my mood down. Anyhow, then I had read so much about it. It's like, come on, Sam, me and my travel buddy, let's give it a try. And we went through it within 3 days, and it was absolutely brilliant. I'm
only on episode 3, finished episode 3, and we don't want to spoil it too.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but it's just, and I will stick to my opinion. That is not my genre, but it's brilliantly executed. Another friend of mine, however, because I'm obviously watching the English dubbed version, he says
Is that how you watch it? You watch the English dubbed, like
English, right? But not the Korean with subtitles.
So I watch it Korean with subtitles.
Yeah. So I wonder if that makes a difference. But who knows? I mean, the conversation is the same. Another friend of mine who started watching it, he said it's very easy dialogue, almost like childish dialogue, but then there's so much mass and heaviness behind it that combination makes it so unique and smart. I think what he tried to express is like the conversation the actors are having is almost like childish, and Squid Game is a child game, if we can spoil that much.
Sure.
And I thought that was an interesting take on it.
Well, there's a poll for people. Do you watch shows that are in another language? I know not you specifically, but do people tend to watch shows if they're in a different language? Do they prefer to switch on the dubbed over English or whatever language they understand, or do they watch it in the original version with their language's subtitles? Personally, I can't stand watching stuff that's been translated or dubbed. I can't stand seeing the mismatch in the dialogue and the lips moving.
Yeah.
And I wonder too, like, depending on the dubbing, like, how close is it? And is it a dumbed down version of the real dialogue?
There is a YouTube, and I haven't watched it, but there's a lot of YouTube material now going into Squid Game and all of the layers you can peel back. And I think one of them is like what the English version really sounds like to a Korean version, if you know what I'm saying. Like,
I do know what you mean, yeah.
But then I live in Germany. I am German. I watch English whenever I can. Scandinavian things, they're really good at making series and movies. I watch original language and then subtitles. In this case, you tell me if my thought was it'd be too tricky to read and then watch it because there's so much you can miss out on. It's very detailed.
Well, that's why I think the subtitles tend to be okay. So I think they're both kind of dumbed down a little bit. Like the translation I think the English acting, whoever's doing the English acting for these shows probably has to do some kind of acting in general, right? Now, the old martial arts movies where they used to do it was a bit ridiculous, like the dubbing. I mean, it made a lot of parodies of that. We were actually watching, when I first watched it, my friend was watching it bizarrely in English with English subtitles. And I said, Mike, why are you watching it in English and then watching the subtitles? And he says, well, because the dialogue is actually slightly different in the subtitles versus what they're saying.
Yeah.
Like, okay. And he's a huge Japanese anime fan. And I said, how do you watch your Japanese anime? Is it usually in English, or do you watch it the Japanese and then read the subtitles? And he said, no, I usually listen to it in Japanese and read the subtitles. So where was I going with that? I think they simplify the dialogue in the subtitles so that you aren't having to understand every single word that's being said.
There's always anything that's in its original language because of how things are being said, how they're meant, and the cultural context is always best in its original language, right?
Yeah. I don't think that show is dialogue heavy, though. I think there's a lot of visual and one lines and two lines.
And then that's what, and I wonder if that's, I'm really happy my friend picked up on it. It's like, he says, yeah, but the dialogues, they're almost childish. And I haven't looked further into it ever since he said that, but I'm like, maybe that is just another layer in this. And you'll find a lot of things on YouTube now. It's like, 10 things you missed out on when watching Squid Game. And it's, anyhow, I didn't want to speak about Squid Game. But
I know, you had the morning show. We'll shave that one.
Yeah, we're so late on that bandwagon now, I think.
Well, I think because I'm watching it too, I'll include that as my what we're watching in the interest of time today. But I have what I'm listening to, but I'll save it for the next episode. Okay, let's move into weird news. We have a couple quick ones here. First one is customer assaults store clerk with banana, causes $1,000 in damages before being arrested.
Just threw the bananas.
So it says here, a customer literally went bananas on a convenience store employee Tuesday morning using the yellow fruit as an assault weapon and destroying $1,000 worth of store property. The incident happened at 3 a.m. at a Quick Trip in Des Moines, Iowa, when the unidentified employee tried to intervene in a domestic dispute involving 26-year-old Rogelia Tapia. That's when Tapia allegedly lashed out, chasing the clerk around the store and throwing various items at him, including the banana. When the police arrived, they ordered Tapia to get on the ground outside the store, but he refused to comply. Eventually, they had to tackle and handcuff him, and he continued to resist, and they were able to arrest him, and they charged him with assault on persons in certain occupations, assault, third-degree criminal mischief, and interference with official acts. Okay. Yeah, this is an older story. It happened at New Year's. They said this was one of 270 calls they responded to on New Year's Eve. They say here that they have a picture of one of the officers glaring at the camera with an expression that shows she's over it. The meme reads, "That face you make when you're sent to help a man being assaulted with a banana." And then I had another one here. This was sort of a little bit of a Good Samaritan one. I guess this guy could post on his LinkedIn that he, how honest he was. Man dumbfounded to receive 48 diamond bracelets in the mail by mistake. A Mississippi man ordered his wife a $2,000 diamond tennis bracelet for Christmas, was stunned when he discovered the package delivered to his home contained not just one, but 48 diamond bracelets and no receipt or paperwork. He says I just stood there and just stared at it for several seconds because I didn't know what to do. I mean, I literally just stared at it, just dumbfounded. Apparently, he said he was a nervous wreck, having almost $100,000 worth of jewelry on his kitchen counter, so he composed himself and immediately called the company. And so they sent him a prepaid label so he could return the inventory, and then they sent him a thank you gift, a pair of diamond earrings. And the name of the company, coincidentally, Jewelry Unlimited.
I like that. That is a true story? You're not making this up?
It's on Yahoo, and I'll post a link to it in the show notes. But Yahoo Life section.
That's good on him. Now that I'm thinking about it, in one of our upcoming episodes, we should probably talk about karma, because my instant feeling towards that story is like, good on him. Really, really good on him. And now, does that diamond company, who knows who it belonged to? Maybe they could have afforded the losses. But I just think somewhere down the line, you'll be rewarded for being that honest. And if you're not being rewarded for it, you're going to pay with a burden of having been dishonest. And so that weighs on your soul. And that's an interesting topic. We should have that one day. I think about karma and these kind of things a lot.
What a nice way to end our episode today.
I agree.
A nice high, warm and fuzzy note.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the skeletons in my closet now, but I also feel warm and fuzzy.
Okay, come back sooner rather than later.
Will do. Thanks, Clark. Been a pleasure as always.